So Memorial Day is coming up, and thank you everyone for joining us. Memorial Day originally was called Declaration Day, and it's, as you all know, a day of remembrance for those who have died in service to America. It's difficult to prove the origins of this day, as there were over dozens of towns and cities all over the country that laid claim to be the birthplace of, quote, Memorial Day. But in May 1966, President Lyndon Johnson stepped in and officially declared Waterloo, New York as the birthplace of Declaration Day, and then named it Memorial Day. It's officially celebrated on the last Monday in May. What's really interesting, and I hope everyone will remember this, is that Memorial Day would not be complete without the birth in 2000 of the National Moment of Remembrance, which asked that at 3 p.m. on Monday, your local time, for all Americans to observe in their own way a moment of remembrance and respect, pausing from whatever you're doing for a moment of silence or listening to taps. Harry Truman said, "Our debt to the heroic men and valiant women in the service of our country can never be repaid. They have earned our undying gratitude. America will never forget their sacrifices, and I hope all of you listening feel the same way." And therein lies the purpose of today's event, to never forget the sacrifices that have been made. And with us today, we're just honored to have two Gold Star families. They belong to a membership that they wish they did not belong to. You've received their impressive bios with the agenda that was sent out to you yesterday. And so I will briefly introduce both at this time, and then when we will hear from them about the power of Memorial Day and its personal meaning to them. Colonel retired Bob Hess is a Gold Star family member. His son, First Lieutenant Robert J. Hess, known as RJ, was killed in action on April 23, 2013, while serving with the 10th Mountain Division, 2nd Battalion, 10th Aviation Brigade, quote, Task Force Nighthawk, at Forward Operating Base Shank in Afghanistan. Mr. Khizr Khan, who's up there in the top left, unfortunately, is also a Gold Star family father. Their middle son, U.S. Army Captain Hamayan Khan, a graduate of the University of Virginia and the Army ROTC program at University of Virginia, was killed in 2004 while stopping a suicide attack near Baqaba, Iraq, saving the lives of U.S. soldiers and Iraqi citizens. He was posthumously awarded a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star. And so, Mr. Hess, we turn this over to you, and following you will be Mr. Khan.
Hi, thanks, Leigh. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Well, again, thank you for the DAC committee for allowing me to participate in your Memorial Day commemoration meeting. And I think you'll hear the same from Mr. Khan, that it's good for the Gold Star families to be able to talk about their loved ones. And it certainly helps. I'd like to say a special hello to Mr. Khan. I can tell you that when I was working through the early days after losing RJ, I spoke to Mr. Khan a couple of times. And all I can say is I truly appreciate his wise counsel, and I do really appreciate his courage. And there are times and there are people that will have an impact on you, even though it may be briefly. And I tell you, during that time, he was very helpful to me. I can tell you, to the committee, Charlottesville is a special place for my family. RJ was a part of the ROTC program there, and Laura and I immediately fell in love with the area. We love going there. We still go there. You would think that because of the memories that would bring back of RJ, it would be hard for us to go to Charlottesville, but it's not. Like I said, we still go there all the time. And I'll tell you some of the reasons why, but I can tell you that Charlottesville is one of our happy places. and we love to go there. And it's just a place that brings back lots of great memories. You know, Letty, you brought up Memorial Day. You know, it's the one day a year that is set aside to remember the fallen and the sacrifices they've made. But I can tell you from, you know, the Hess family, the Khan family, and all the other Gold Star families, every day is Memorial Day. So I appreciate you, you know, bringing it out today, but, you know, for the other folks on the committee, you know, that's kind of the way that we look at the remembrance of our loved ones. But I can tell you that because of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, Americans, I think, are much more aware and are much more sensitive to the sacrifices of our fallen and remembering and honoring what they've done for the country. You know, it's interesting. I really hadn't thought about it. My family first started serving this country back in the Revolutionary War. My ancestor was an artilleryman in the Continental Army. RJ's great-grandfather served in World War I and World War II. Both his grandfathers served in the Korean War. His uncle served in Vietnam. You've seen that I have served, and I think, you know, I think RJ just figured it, you know, it was his turn. But I can tell you that serving and sacrifice is just not with the service members. It also applies, in my opinion, to our first responders. And it also applies to the family members, you know, because it's the family members that are left behind when we deploy and to go do our whatever business we're going to do. And that's really hard on families. And I think it goes unnoticed a lot because you're talking about missing special events, missing birthdays, anniversaries, you know, graduations, holidays. You know, it was funny, Laura and I were talking and, you know, reminiscing, and, you know, I missed 4 Christmases with my family. You know, most people that never happens. And 2 of those times were in combat. So that puts a lot of wear and tear on families, and it makes it really difficult on them. But there is a group that I would like to mention that I think really goes unforgotten, and that's the members of the National Guard and Reserve. When you're on an active duty unit, you have an organization, you have a unit, you have a post, and that you belong to, and there's an infrastructure there that is there to support you. When you're in the National Guard and Reserve, you don't may necessarily have that. And the reason why I bring that up is if you have members of the Guard and Reserve in your communities, in your neighborhoods, and you know that they're deployed or getting ready to deploy, reach out to those families, make sure that they're okay. Because a lot of times there's no net underneath them. They're out there on their own, and they're dealing with some of the struggles that active duty units do all the time, but they're doing it on their own. So I just ask you to look out for them. Like I said, I think RJ always knew he was going to serve. He always used to say all the time that, yeah, I'm not going to follow in your footsteps, talking to me, you know, and I'm thinking, what's wrong with what I did? You know, so I just knew he was going to do it his way, and he did. So when he was selected to be an Army Aviator, of course, I was very excited, and so was his grandfather, because he was an aviator as well. But I also knew, you know, he was going to do it his way. So I get to a little bit about RJ. He was the top graduate from the ROTC class that he graduated from at UVA. He was also a winner of the Norman Flecker Award, which is given to an ROTC, the cadet that inspires selfless service, inspires integrity, and so on. And the award was named after a UVA ROTC graduate who was an aviator that was killed in a helicopter crash in Korea in 1998. So of course, you know, RJ was very excited. I was very proud of him because it said a lot about him. RJ entered the Army, went to flight school, was a Black Hawk pilot. And, as commanders, because I was former Army, as commanders would kind of let me know how he was doing. And of course, I mean, he's just, he was the type of lieutenant that I think every commander wanted. And that's kind of the, kind of what I would get from his commanders, which, of course, I was very proud. When he was getting ready to deploy to Afghanistan, even though he's a very junior officer, because of his, the way he was selected to be a part of an organization that was going to support, we'll just say, some special individuals that had a very unique mission requirements in Afghanistan. I was not necessarily so excited about that, but RJ was, and he was excited to deploy, and he was excited to go with his unit. Then came the 23rd of April, 2013. RJ was killed along with a young man named Captain Aaron Blanchard, and several others were wounded. And a tough day, a very hard day. It was a day that I wasn't sure that I was going to get through. I had mentioned, soon after that, having conversations with Mr. Khan that were very helpful, and kind of helped put things into perspective. But I can also tell you that it was, and I consider him part of the Army family. And it was the Army family that, kind of came together, and I knew that was going to help me get through this. So I just mentioned losing RJ. My other son, Patrick, wanted to join the Army and decided not to, because he didn't want to put pressure on the family. So 4 years after we lose RJ, Patrick comes up to me and says, Dad, I don't want to be your age and regret not doing something I always wanted to do. And that's serving our country like Grandpa did, you did, and RJ did. So Laura and I, it was tough for us. We knew it was the right thing to do. We knew that we couldn't stop Patrick from living his life and doing what he thought was important to him. So of course we said, okay. So Patrick joined the Army as a 28-year-old, married 28-year-old with a 1-year-old son, which is not very common. He's currently a sergeant serving at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And because of his age, all his soldiers, his name is Dad. So that's what they call him, which he hates, and I just absolutely cracks me up. And it's so appropriate because he is, he cares for them like he is their father. Good news is that young Sergeant Hess was just selected to attend the Warrant Officer Candidate School and to go to flight school. Of course, I'm very excited because the Hess family will have yet another aviator. But it also means that, Patrick and Shelby will be starting a whole new chapter in part of their Army experience. But what it's done is really helped Laura and I, because the Army was my life. I spent 28 years in the Army, and Laura and I, it's helped us heal, which has been a terrific thing for us. But the remembering and honoring is very important. It's important to not only for the fallen, but it's also important to the families. And I can tell you that you can see it on Memorial Day when the visitors come and they're visiting the families there at Section 60. And you can see the families just brighten up because they get an opportunity to talk about their loved ones. And Section 60 is a very special place to me. I know it's a special place to the Khans because that's where our sons are buried. But it's also a place where there's over 900 other brothers and sisters as part of the Army family. They're buried there from Iraq and Afghanistan. So, we look at, how do you honor, and why do we honor? And I think some of the simplest ways of doing that, just go to Arlington and just see it. And I think you start to get the magnitude of the level of sacrifice for this country. You can also go to a local Veterans Administration cemetery and see. But the thing is it is just to make the gesture and to do it. We've been very fortunate to have a very good support structure between RJ's friends, his schools, the ROTC department there at Charlottesville. So we've been very, very grateful for the support that we've had. Another organization is Carry the Load. And Letty, you know that, because, that's an organization that is about, its initial purpose was to remember and kind of bring Americans back to remembering what Memorial Day was about. And it's expanded into more of now it's doing it every day. And I know RJ's friends have done that, but I know that, for everybody, Letty actually participated in a recent event and carried the name of Captain Khan and Lieutenant Hess on her back for the entire event. And, and here's an example of Letty had no idea who RJ was, but yet because she was part of the Army family, she didn't. And that's remembering, and that's doing it because she knows what it means to the families. And I can tell you, Letty from the Hess family, we appreciate that. And it makes us, even for that little bit of time, it numbs the pain, and it really helps bring to light, the good that not only our kids brought out, but also that there is out there in the country. I can tell you that, we've done some things that I know the ROTC department, and back to the remembering, there's now an award in RJ's name, just like for Captain Khan and for Lieutenant Flecker. So there's now a First Lieutenant RJ Hess Leadership Award. And that's presented every year. And part of that, it was kind of some of the fundraising was the ROTC department put together the RJ Hess Memorial Run. And we do that every year. And it gives Laura and I a reason to go to Charlottesville. Laura for more reason to go shopping than it is for me to go visit the cadets and hang out with those guys. But the run is now a more of a community outreach effort. And the proceeds of the run go to a local charity there in Charlottesville. So this year, the charity is the Companion Animal Fund. And a lot of folks will go, well, that's kind of a weird charity for a military kind of oriented type event. Well, I can tell you, RJ was a huge animal lover. And when he was in Charlottesville at UVA, he used to organize groups to go to the local shelters. He did the same thing at Fort Rucker with the flight students. And that's how he ended up with Jesse, our grand dog, who he came to us when RJ deployed. And of course, we still have him, and we're grateful to have him because he's a piece of RJ that we still have. So I can tell you for the group, if the cadets reach out to your organization or your businesses, I would just ask you to consider to participate. Not only does it help remember RJ, but it also helps a local charity there in the Charlottesville area. And the kids, and the run is completely done by the kids, by the cadets. And I tell you what, you talk about impressive young people. And I say this every time I talk to everybody, that I'm just glad I never had to compete against them. Because they are, I'm telling you, I've never seen such bright, capable youngsters going into the Army than that group of kids. I'm telling you, really impressive. I would like to think, in closing, I would like to thank Dr. Wood of the Old Dominion Animal Hospital and Miss Gina out there at the Nook for their support and collaboration. Because of COVID, it took us 2 years to actually get to do the run this time, but we did it. And I can tell you, for the group that's on here right now, if you haven't had the cinnamon buns there at the Nook, I'd highly recommend them. I had one after the run, and it was awesome. So for the group and for the DAC, And for Mr. Khan and Letty, thank you. Thank you for letting me tell RJ's story, why we remember, why it's important to Gold Star family members. But again, why it's, why we have great kids that are willing to sacrifice, willing to join at the time of war, and go do the things that this country asks them to do. So again, thank you. And I'm hoping that now that you know what I look like, if you see me in a store, standing and waiting, it's probably because I'm waiting for Laura to quit spending money at one of your stores or businesses or something. So, but again, thank you very much, and hope you guys have a nice Memorial Day weekend. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hess, Colonel Hess. Your comments are heartfelt, and we will be happy to advocate on behalf of that memorial run when you have it next. Mr. Khan, the floor is yours, sir. We're all very anxious to hear you today.
Well, thank you, Colonel Ben. I'm grateful to DAC and to Charlottesville Regional Chamber of Commerce for inviting me, allowing me to stand in the grace of our patriots. Colonel Hess, if you would allow me to share a quick story of how we know RJ. We had started a tradition to invite fourth-year commissioning graduates of UVA ROTC to our home. And the year RJ graduated and commissioned, he came with his other classmates to pay us a visit. And the reason I share this publicly, I have shared this with Hess family, what a son they had, for the world to know that these patriots are very special people. Their families have made them very special. So RJ comes to our home, rest of the group is eating dinner. He gets up and he comes to me. He said, Mr. Khan, I hear you have Captain Hamayan Khan room dedicated to his memory. Can I take a look? So I walked him to that room, and it meant so very much to us. Mrs. Khan came and joined us. His demeanor, his manner of looking at each and everything that we have placed, his interest. Ghazala and I were behind him and we looked at each other. Of course, he was looking at things and asking questions and all that. Through all that, what we were getting was that he was comforting us. Every gesture, every word that came out of RJ's mouth was, he was making sure that we are comforted. So whenever we go to Arlington Cemetery, to section 60, of course, there are all of our sons and daughters there. But we make two special stops. One is Captain Humayun Khan, and the second is RJ. And every time we stand there, whenever we have our guests, we never hesitate to tell that story, that how RJ to us is known, Hess family to us is known as a comforter. And the reason I say this is for our audience to always remember, sometimes the simple act of compassion has a profound impact on the person with whom you are sharing that simple gesture of compassion. So anyway, back to my comments. Memorial Day is next week. And as we commemorate all patriots of our nation who have given their all in defense of our country and our freedom, we bow our heads in gratitude and to remember them and their sacrifice for our nation. As Ronald Reagan said, freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We did not pass it to our children in bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. So today, I wish to pay tribute to our veterans, their families, men and women serving in uniform and their families, men and women of our law enforcement and their families. Thank you for continuing to serve under very difficult circumstances. Again, Reagan said, some people live an entire life and wonder if they have ever made a difference in the world. A veteran does not have that problem. So thank you for your service, your continued service. I admire your service and dedication in building this great nation. In the first half of the last century, division, anger, and hate brought 2 world wars and destruction in the world. But then world realized that progress lies in peace and unity. America in lead, you rebuilt America and the world. You created alliances and organizations like NATO, United Nations. And in the second half of the last century, the world saw peace, prosperity, democratic values, and rule of law prosper. Because of your service, your valor, your leadership and sacrifice, America has been a deterrent against the authoritarians, dictators, demagogues in the world. Today, the world is facing conflicts which may turn into larger conflicts. I pray my worries are ill-founded. Knowing him since birth, Humayun will say this, and on his behalf, I say this. Before preparing for these comments, I read some of the materials that Humayun always had kept in his collection. And he would say this, to our policymakers, I urge you to plan to fulfill our commitments to military families, caregivers, survivors, and to keep our sacred obligation to our veterans, which include pay service members competitive wage, provide resources for military spouses, caregivers, and survivors, prioritize for military children, and provide veterans world-class healthcare to meet their specific needs. Make progress to eliminate veteran homelessness and bring down suicide rate. Create meaningful employment and educational opportunities. Improve VA management and accountability. Let us elect more veterans to be the voice of veterans, voice of and for military families and our men and women in uniform serving today. In conclusion, I wish to recite few words that every veteran and currently serving member of our armed forces and their families are familiar with. Said by General MacArthur in his farewell speech on May 12, 1962, duty, honor, country. Those 3 hollowed words reverently dictate what you ought to be what you can be, what you will be. They are your rallying point to build courage when courage seems to fail, to regain faith when there seems to be little cause of faith, to create hope when hope becomes forlorn. And speaking of you, all my sisters and brothers, our veterans, within the reach of my voice, General MacArthur said, I regarded them then as I regard them now, as one of the world's noblest figures. Their name and fame are the birthright of every American citizen. In their youth and strength, their love and loyalty, they gave all that mortality can give. They have written their own history. They belong to history as furnishing one of the greatest examples of successful patriotism. They belong to posterity as the instructor of future generations in the principles of liberty and freedom. They belong to the present. They belong to us by their virtue and by their achievements. So, my fellow Americans, let it be known today that by your leadership, we will unite America to rebuild. May God bless all of those who have given their all to this country, their blessed families, you all and your families. May God bless United States of America. Thank you again. I will yield and I'm available to answer any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khan. I have a question for you. When your son came to you and your wife and said he wanted to go into the military, what did you think?
Well, unlike Hess family, we are a non-military family. We were concerned. I had a conversation with him that whenever you join a large organization like the United States military, you lose control of your life, meaning where you will live, what work you will do, where you will work, and so on. Are you willing to give up all that to serve? And without hesitation, he said to me, he said, yes, I am. I have considered, I have pondered on that question, and I am willing to give up all that to spend rest of my life with the honorable men and women that I study with, that I associate with as member of ROTC, and which father would, after hearing that, which father would stop their son or daughter from joining? And then he said later on, whenever I would ask him, how do you feel while he was serving? And this was his answer. He says that I made 3 best decisions of my life at such an early age. One was to come to University of Virginia. He loved University of Virginia and the grounds and Thomas Jefferson for its emphasis on public service. He said, second best decision I made in my life, and I considered myself so fortunate that I joined ROTC. I have studied, I have associated, I have lived with the most honorable young men that I have ever seen. And then third, and the best decision I made was the decision to join the United States Army. And whenever his memory becomes very burdensome for us in the family, we talk about that to the last moment, the last breath of his life, like RJ, he was doing what he loved best. And that comforts us that our son, at the moment of his last breath, how many of us can say that? All of us wish, all of us pray for that moment in our life, that at the last moment of our life, we could feel and say that I am doing what I have loved, what I enjoy. And there had been just so many examples. I'm dragging the answer to your question, but there is so much that we have found out after Captain Hamayan Khan's passing. He had created a tradition in his unit. We have written a small book, our memoir, and I was at a book signing. A lady comes with the book and a 10-year-old son with her and says to me, Mr. Khan, could you sign this book? My name is such and such, but you don't remember or know me. I stood up that there may be something very special. She said that, Mr. Khan, you don't know me. I was at Bakuba. I was in Captain Khan's unit. I was the member of that unit. Captain Khan had a standing order to all of us that regardless of what time you end your shift, come to my room, open the drawer, and there would be bread and peanut butter. I don't want you to go to sleep hungry. Make sure you eat. That is what these patriots are made of. When I tell these stories, I'm not talking about just Captain Khan, not just RJ. I'm talking about every patriot. Most of those patriots are with us today. They are example of true humanity, true patriotism. That is why this nation is beacon of hope. It is not because of its politics. It's not because of its economic might and other things, but it is because of this patriotism, this leadership that you all display, Colonel Hess, Colonel Ben, and other friends with us. It is because of you this country is great. This country is beacon of hope and will remain so as long as you exist among us. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khan. Colonel Hess, can you explain for our audience what the difference is between a Gold Star family and a Blue Star family?
Sure. I think, a lot of folks, you'll see cars and they'll have a flag on the back of their car, and you'll see blue stars. And you may see one with one blue star, and you may see some, I've seen as many as 4. And what that means is those families have the number of stars that are on that flag actually deployed in service of the country. So when you're driving around and you see one of those flags on the back of the car, and you'll see it's usually a rectangle and it has red and then a white background and then the blue stars. And that's what that means. So that means that when you see more than one, that family actually has more than one individual as part of that family that is currently deployed in service of the country. Now the Gold Star, that represents a loss of a loved one. So I have something that I carry with me all the time, and it's the same symbol with a gold star in it. and that's with me all the time. We don't, well, I can say my family does not advertise. We don't put that on our cars. We don't do any of that, because that is, that's something that is special to us. But it doesn't mean that we don't want people to know. It just means that that's something that we don't go around and sharing, because it's something that's private and special to us, and something that that is something that's special to the Hess family.
Great, thank you so very much. And this is sort of a question for both of you, and it is, I'm assuming that the Gold Star family reaches out and provides support for your families. And so being a part of this organization, while not something you ever hoped to be, I'm assuming it's been helpful for you as you've gone through this terrible family tragedy. Mr. Khan, you'd like to say anything about the organization and how it may have helped you and your family?
Yes, it is. It is always heartening and comforting to know that people care of your grief and your loss, and as a return, and I encourage your audience to do the same. You can register with Arlington Cemetery. There comes a time when there are soldiers that are being interned at Arlington Cemetery that do not have family, or family cannot travel, or family is not available. They seek, not actively, but if your name is on the list, you can volunteer and become a foster parent of the soldier that is being interned. Sometime I have noticed that even though family is there, it is very heartening for them to have your support, and as a Gold Star parent, your presence with them. We are social beings. We are heartened, and we are encouraged, and we are strengthened if we see others standing with us. So that is what my experience had been. Various organizations reach out, invite to speak, share our experience, and we always make sure that we are available, and we join them and do whatever we can to share their burden.
I never knew about that program. I'm happy you've mentioned it, and we'll make sure that folks here in the Charlottesville region do know about that. For those who are listening, at the conclusion of this event, we have a very special treat for everybody. After our chair, Deborah Van Eerstel's closing remarks, we'll be playing a 4-minute tape from PBS as Mr. Khan presents his take on dignity and patriotism. It is well worth your 4 minutes, although we understand some people may have to jump off. And in closing, I can say, that we are so honored to have had both of you on today. I know both of you speak at a lot of events. And so in closing, I would just like to say that not only shall we remember our fallen service members with pride this Memorial Day, but to quote John F. Kennedy once proclaimed, as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest form of appreciation is not in uttering words, but in living by them. And we've heard from both Colonel Hess and Mr. Khan about the importance of engaging with our communities and the Reserve Force and National Guard. And I would hope that those of you listening will get more involved with our Defense Affairs Committee as we attempt and move forward in doing all of those things. I will now turn it over to Deborah for closing comments. Thank you all for joining us. Deborah?
Thank you, Letty, and thank you, Mr. Khan and Colonel Hess. I think you've seen in the chat box that most everybody on this presentation is grateful for your time today and sharing your stories and feeling a lot of compassion. And I hope you're feeling comfort from this group, even if we're not speaking due to the number of people on it. But it resonated to me, Mr. Khan, when you said that acknowledging your son and your sons is a form of comfort. And so I hope that we are comforting you today in this acknowledgement of their service and their sacrifice to our nation. We are delighted to have everybody here on this program today. This is part of a growing effort, and we hope that we can do more of this sort of thing, and we hope that we can continue to engage our speakers from today and others who are in our community. My father was in the Air Force, so I have a little bit of a sense of military service, and when he passed, we had the military at the funeral, which kind of shocked me because I just had not expected that. And that's when I really understood the tightness of the military community in a way that I didn't before. And so your words are very comforting to me as well. So Letty, I'll let you take us to our 4-minute segment, and then I would wish everybody a very lovely Memorial Day weekend, keeping our friends and families in mind, and a safe one at that. And we will see you at our next quarterly meeting.
My kids with our guests sometime to Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C., and I would ask them to read the inscription on the wall. And they would be amazed to see what is written. Sometimes these kids would roll their eyes. I've taken them 20 times already, and they would complain that why you keep bringing us here. But patriotism begins to take root. When Captain Hamayan Khan arrived at University of Virginia, Thomas Jefferson's university in Charlottesville, he became avid reader of Jefferson. And public service, the emphasis on public service, serving others became his motto. And you see from his life how far that took him, service of others. The person that he became by the training that Army provided him turned him into a patriot. He was protecting those who were under his responsibility. On June 8, 2004, he was in Bakuba, Iraq. He realized that this car is moving too fast towards the doors. He told his men and women at the gate to hit the ground. He had the option to hit the ground. But that would have meant that this car would hit the gate and harm the people at the gate and beyond on the other side of the wall. He took 10 steps, those 10 made in America bravery steps towards the car. His hand extended trying to stop it. He did stop the car, causing it to prematurely. He lost his life instantly there. But that has become symbol of Captain Humayun Khan, that there comes time in every person's life when you have to stand up, even if it means risking your life for the values that you cherish so very much. He granted us 27 years of his presence. Only parents know this. It is said that when you lose a child, it creates a hole in your heart, and that is never filled. You learn to live with that. Guess who said that to me? I was at Union Station checking into travel train. The person who was issuing me the ticket looked at me, he recognized me, he came. There was a line of people waiting. He came behind the counter, gave me a hug, and whispered in my ear, "Mr. Khan, I want you to know that I have lost son too." When I go to Arlington Cemetery, I not only stand at Captain Hamayan Khan's grave and pray for his soul, I pray for all of my sons and daughters that are buried there. It means so very much to me. My name is Khizr Khan. This is my brief but spectacular take on dignity and patriotism.
Oh, Mr. Khan, I've seen that like 5 times, and every time it just gets me. Thank you so much for that. And for everyone else who's on the line still, I thank you for joining us today, acknowledging all our chamber members who are with us today, our elected officials, and please have a safe and thoughtful Memorial Day. Do not forget 3 p.m. on Monday, the 31st. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Khan. Thank you, Mr. Hess. I look forward to speaking and meeting both of you sometime in a very near future.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.